Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Today we're going to talk a little bit about our relationship with God and how we should be viewing it and how we should not be viewing it. And to illustrate this, I want to point to something that I watched on TV the other day that I think illustrates how we often think of things and maybe how we shouldn't be thinking of things anymore. Anybody that knows me personally knows that I love the show The Office, which I realize is like one of the most basic things you could ever tell about yourself because millions and millions of people also like that show. So it doesn't really tell you anything personal about me, but I do love that show. I think it's so funny, and I watch it entirely too much. Actually, years ago, I went to a trivia night with a small group of people, and it was like me and one other girl that got every single question right for the night, and we ended up winning. And we were, on one hand, really proud because finally the knowledge that we knew about the show was useful for something. But also we were a little bit embarrassed because it's like, man, you had to watch that show a lot in order to know all of those answers. So kind of a give and take. I have watched a lot of The Office in my life, and it's one of my comfort shows. I just think it's so good. But there's this one episode called Goodbye Toby. And for those of you that haven't seen it, Toby is the HR rep for the company, and he just gets mercilessly picked on by Michael, the boss. And I think Michael can't stand him because as HR, Toby kind of represents corporate. Michael's kind of he doesn't play by the rules. He doesn't like to do things that are appropriate. He's constantly getting in trouble. And I think Toby represents that corporate authority that kind of, dampens his fun just a little bit. And then there's also some personal things going on as well. But people just, it's funny to watch, but you also, like, on a real human level, if that were to happen in an office setting, Toby would be very much pitied because Michael is terrible to him. But in the show, it is funny. But so finally, after a while, Toby's just had enough. He's like, I don't even know what I'm doing here anymore. So he decides to leave. And Michael is so thrilled about this because he can't get rid of Toby because Toby is a corporate hire working in the branch. So Toby leaving is like his dream come true. And he's going to throw this huge party and he's going to go all out, spend all this money. But what he really can't wait for is this exit interview that he's going to do with Toby about the company. It's supposed to be about this anyways, about the company, what they could improve, kind of little like personal review as well of, the positions in the office, how he found his experience or whatever. And Michael's so excited about this because he sees it as an opportunity to unleash like one last round of just like merciless abuse at Toby. And he's got it all planned out. He's got, he's going to give him a rock for a gift that says, suck on that. He's just like, he's got notes written down of all the terrible things he's going to say to him. And you can see it on his face. He's like so excited. And right when they're about to start this interview, Holly Flax walks in. And Holly is the HR person that's taking over for Toby. But unlike Toby, who Michael can't stand, when Michael sees Holly, he like instantly has a crush on this woman. And their relationship actually progresses later on the show. I'm not going to spoil it just in case you haven't seen it, if you're like one of the 2 people in the world that hasn't. But Michael really is crushing on Holly a lot. And so as soon as she walks in and says, no, I have to be here for this interview, it's part of my job, he is like visibly stressed about this because he can't be mean to Toby anymore without appearing like a jerk. So he's got to be kind of nice, and he's trying to read through his notes that's like just filled with horrible things, but instead he's got to spin it in a good way. And so he's trying to conceal the fact that he wanted to be mean to Toby because he doesn't want Holly to think badly of him. And I think sometimes this is exactly the situation that we feel we are in with God the Father. We're Toby, God is Michael, and we're just so grateful that Holly, and the counterpart to that would be Jesus Christ, walked in and stopped him from doing what he wanted, which is like just being horribly, horribly mean to us. But that is not at all what the Bible outlines as the relationship the Father wants to have with us. If that's how we're thinking, we really need to kind of flip our thoughts on this a little bit, because he is described as a father for a reason. And yes, Jesus Christ has his role in all of this. We'll explore that in a second. But we cannot think that the Father is just out to get us and he hates us. I think this is the reason that we see in mainstream Christianity this absolute love for Jesus Christ, but kind of a slight avoidance of the Father, just a little bit, because maybe we're like a little bit wary of him if we're thinking, man, he would just strike us down if he had the chance. Good thing that Christ covered us and that's all he can see now. almost like we've fooled him or something. But that's not the relationship that's going on here at all. I understand why we think this. Jesus Christ in the Bible is a kind of go-between between us and the Father, in the sense that he is called a mediator. And that is something that we have a slightly different view of now than I think the Bible intended it to be. Now, a mediator is just a role. But whenever we hear of the role, we think of the different conflicts that mediators get used for. And I think in a modern setting, I'm sure mediators were used for other things in the first century as well that would have lent themselves to this. But we have to remember that it's a role. It doesn't necessarily mean that the conflict we find ourselves in is the same as the conflict that we might use a mediator for today. And we'll go into that in just a second. So the word mediator here in Greek is mesites. It does mean go-between, but it also means a reconciler. That's a really important part of the meaning of this role. Because when we say that Christ reconciles us to the Father, yes, we can still slightly think that maybe the Father is the one that's like angry with us or hates us, and so Christ has to kind of bring us together. But really, we need to remember that we are the ones that moved. We are the aggressors in that situation. And so when he's reconciling us to the Father, he's not bringing the Father, this angry, vindictive God, closer to us. Instead, he is removing our sins so that we can get closer to him. That's his role here. Some places in the Bible, it says that when it calls Jesus Christ a mediator, it says he's the mediator of the new covenant, which also kind of brings on these connotations of facilitation, or he brings about the new covenant, or he institutes it. So that's an important part to remember as well. But in human terms, we're thinking, like modern human terms, we're thinking of the mediator as somebody who is in between two opposing parties. There are two groups that are incredibly angry with each other, and so now they need this mediator because they're both just trying to bleed the other person dry. But we have to remember that the reason we even need a mediator is not because of something God has done, but because of something we have done. We made ourselves enemies of God by virtue of our sin. We moved. We are the aggressors. But instead of accepting this state of our enemy, God, we make ourselves enemies to God, but God doesn't just allow that to stand. Instead, we learn in John 3:16, he loves us so much that instead of accepting us as enemies, he opted to show us an incredible love so that we could be made right with him again. Like he's trying to fix what we broke. And so he's the one that called the mediator in the first place. We have to remember that. So it's not at all like sort of conflict resolution that we'll see in the world where you have this opposing party versus that opposing party. There is no love there at all. They're just trying to win in some sort of contract. Let's say you've got two people getting divorced. They want this contract dissolved, and this person is trying to take from that person, and this person is trying to take from that person. In the end, the mediator is trying to solve things fairly, and that is a valid role of mediator, but it's not the same relationship between us and the Father, and so it's not the same role of mediator that we need to think of Christ as occupying. So, I mean, I don't want to say that, Jesus is trying to mediate things fairly. Absolutely. He is a just being. I mean, he is God, but it's not the same. Like, we are not divorcees and God is a divorcee and we're trying to just get whatever we can from him. He's not trying to take us for all we're worth, and we shouldn't be trying to take him for all he's worth. We could not stand in court at all if that was the case. But instead, God institutes this mediator to bring us back to himself, to reconcile us to himself. And so if this is, if you want to imagine it like a divorce, we were the ones that filed for divorce. Not only were we the aggressors or the offenders, but then we filed for divorce. And instead of allowing that to go through, God said, all right, let's just come to the table, not to try and get each other's back or not get each other's back like to support each other, but to try and be vengeful towards each other or hateful towards each other, but instead let's try and repair this relationship. And that is the role that Christ is in, not in this role that, God just can't wait to be evil to us and he's trying to exact vengeance and get everything he can from us. No, he's the one that called the mediator because of our offense. And he's the one that's not trying to steal from us, and we shouldn't be trying to steal from him, but instead he's trying to repair the relationship. And so that's the role that Jesus Christ fills, is repairing a relationship, or allowing us to, with any sort of dignity, come before the Father again. And honestly, if that is how we think of it, then we will be a lot more humble. Now, we can be humble in thinking that the Father's out to get us or something. That creates a sort of false humility where we are just fearful, and so we're humble. In this, in recognizing that it is only the Father's love that sent Jesus Christ in the first place to die for us, to reconcile us to him, to repair that relationship and act as a conduit between us, not a barrier. If we realize that, then we have a humility that's based in the understanding of the love that he has for us. And that is a far better place to be. So God is not Michael Scott trying to be vile to us and evil to us and just can't wait to exact his vengeance. That's not who God the Father is. And Jesus is not Holly Flax trying to hold back his anger, that we're just so grateful he happened to walk in. Because if he didn't, then God would destroy us. What's actually happening here is that both the Father and the Son are actively fighting for our success. And so what we have to do then is not fight against them by unnecessarily thinking that the Father is some sort of opposing force that's taken us to court. That's not what's going on here. And so if this is how you're feeling, or maybe you feel this way and you are okay with it because it does produce some sort of humility by fear, understand that God does want your humility, but not out of fear. He wants your humility out of the love he's shown you when you didn't deserve it.